Good afternoon, delegates. Hello. Are there any gardeners out there? Anyone gardening? Yes? A few hands have gone up. Excellent. That's a good start. Well, my aim today, my mission, is to make you all gardeners, and perhaps some of you even guerrilla gardeners like me. I am a guerrilla gardener. I'm one of thousands around the world who garden without boundaries, by which I mean we garden someone else's land, and we do it without asking first. So I kind of I overlook boundaries of ownership, I overlook boundaries of permission, and I certainly ignore boundaries of convention, because what we do, sadly, still isn't that normal. So why do people do it? That's what I'm going to hopefully explain to you today. This is the kind of thing we do. One little example, one small little patch of a roundabout just near where I live in the Elephant and Castle in London. And incredibly, this nearly got me arrested, because guerrilla gardening is still technically a criminal activity. And if you want to find out more about what happened here, you can see the video on YouTube. But I'm glad to say that getting arrested is the kind of thing that very rarely happens to guerrilla gardeners. I'm sure I wouldn't be here today if that was the case. It's just one of those technicalities. And the kind of guerrilla gardening that I advocate mostly is public land that's neglected. And to me, this is a fantastic resource for us all. This is our land. It's public already, and if it isn't being looked after, if it's being forgotten about or abused or attracting antisocial behavior, then imagine what it could be instead, through the eyes of a gardener. It could be full of tulips. It could be a place of food. It could be a place of gathering. It could be a place that's greater for wildlife. It could be whatever you, as a gardener, could want to make it into. Now, why did I start guerrilla gardening? Well, I live here. It's not the most beautiful of buildings, but it is cheap, and it's light, and it's airy, and it's in central London. But when I chose to live here 8 years ago, I overlooked one rather important criteria. It has no garden. But thankfully, just outside was this neglected, miserable flower bed. Yes, this is meant to be a flower bed. But the authority, the local authority, Southwark Council, who own that building and were meant to be doing this job, seemed to have forgotten about it. Now, some people might complain, some people might sit back and wait for something to be done about it. But for me, this was an exciting opportunity. This was a space that I could make into a garden myself. Like we heard earlier from Jason, I think childhood has quite an impact on what we later on do in our lives, of course. And for me, London was a foreign environment. I grew up in the countryside. I grew up gardening as a child, as a teenager. It was my obsession. It was employment. And now here I was as an adult in London, working in an office every day with an itch to just go and plant something. So my motivation was as a frustrated gardener. It was as simple as that. I wasn't considering this as a campaign. I wasn't describing myself as an environmentalist. I just wanted to do some gardening and make this look a bit better. So that's what I did. And this is what it looks like more recently. And in doing this, I was taking a risk. You know, I hadn't asked permission, but in addition to the law, the kind of obstacle that a guerrilla gardener might face are theft. You know, these plants are out there in public. Somebody might steal them. Somebody might vandalize them. They might trample them. People might just think you're a bit weird. Why are you out there doing this? Surely it's someone else's job. So for me, doing this was an experiment in seeing whether those negatives, those pessimistic reasons why not to bother were actually real. And as you can see from the pictures, they weren't too real at all. Yes, I've lost a few plants, I've seen people picking them, but at the end of the day, the garden has succeeded because I think people do generally respect plants. They have an innate power in them. And if you persevere and make it look good, then even in the grimmest of areas, I've seen this succeed. But as a campaign, as an opportunity to spread the word, which I began to get excited about, of course, just seeing a garden doesn't communicate that. People could see this and assume this was done by the official local authority. And in those early days, as I said, my motivation was just to do some gardening. So I was sneaking out in the middle of the night. I didn't want to meet anyone. I didn't want to have that face-to-face confrontation. This was a surreptitious act. But in hindsight, that was quite unnecessary. It was a lot of fun, but it was not necessary. And I was missing out on some of the other reasons why guerrilla gardening can be great. And that's the social side. Because if you're out there gardening, there's something, I believe, that's very approachable about being a gardener. Even though, like Sunny and Lila here, with their sharp metal tools in hand, you might think, oh, dangerous women. But no, they're gardening, and most people can recognize that they're doing something that's caring for nature. And that's very powerful act these days. And it means if you're out there in public, it's a conversation starter. Don't wear the high visibility jacket, the international uniform of a maintenance contractor, unless you want to be invisible. Unless, like me in the early days, you're feeling shy about it, then no one will ask you anything. You can get away with anything. But if you want to have those conversations, then gardening like this is a great way of doing that. And it means that you might encourage people to join in, or at the very least, it means you might encourage them to respect what you're doing, to tolerate what you're doing, to spread the word, and therefore help protect the gardens that you've started that are vulnerable in these public places. And by being more public about it, it's enabled me to take on more and more areas. The enthusiastic gardener in me spots these potentials all around my local neighborhood. And you can see on the map here, where I began was the blue circle, and I've spread in the streets nearby. So places that I can get to enjoy, and I can get to regularly look after, and get help in looking after as well. Hundreds of people over the 8 years that I've been doing this here have helped me create these gardens. Now, the social side has become social digitally in recent years as well. One group that I met in Brussels, who go by the name of the Brussels Farmers, they started guerrilla gardening as a social act. They were students, they were leaving college, and they wanted something that would keep them together, an activity that they could share. And they chose guerrilla gardening as the way to do this. They also invented a day called International Sunflower Guerrilla Gardening Day, which is on the 1st of May. Now, this has been going for about 6 years now, and we plant sunflower seeds on May the 1st across the Northern Hemisphere. It's a bit late for some, a bit early for others, but it kind of works. And this is now an activity that thousands sign up to online, and you can see some pictures here of people participating in Denmark, in Salt Lake City, in Poland, in Edinburgh, even in Uruguay, which is the wrong side of the equator to be planting sunflowers. Another way of being social with your garden when you're not actually there is to put up signs. It's a simple piece of friendly advertising. And here, guerrilla gardeners in Toronto were planting marigolds. It's very dry there in the summer, so they were inviting people to help out and water. I've seen messages all over the place, generally asking for help or respect in a cheerful, informal kind of way, so that it's quite clear before you've even read the words that this is not an official notice, this is someone like you who cares for their local space. in the last few years, guerrilla gardening has grown and become a more social thing than ever before. I get emails from people asking me, how do I get involved? Where can I find my local group? Now, you can do it on your own, like many guerrilla gardeners do and like I started. But there are groups now, and just by trawling Facebook, look at all these different groups around the world with their own logos, their own identities, and a variety of their own missions for why they do it as well. You can see that from the design that goes into these identities, the degree to which they're more anarchic or more conventional. Now, in discovering people around the world who are doing this, through my own website, GuerrillaGardening.org, I have met some truly inspiring people. And I will give you a very brief description of just a few of them today. This is Adam. He was a guerrilla gardener in New York. And he was there in the early days, in the 1970s, which is when guerrilla gardening really began to become more mainstream. It's really when the term was coined. And Adam has created not little patches next to the roadsides and pavements as I've done, but he and hundreds in New York have created community gardens, social spaces where once there was rubble and neglect. And he told me the tales of 30 years worth of effort that enabled them to actually get permission at the end of the day. This is Morris in Zurich. He's been sowing hollyhock seeds around the pavements in the Swiss city for 25 years. And you cannot miss his work now if you go there in the summer. And I visited Botswana and met Kagasang and her friends who guerrilla garden to grow food. She found neglected land next to her home and her garden and took it over, planted up vegetables, and has been using this to feed a local hospital. A few years after she started, the owner of the land discovered her, and he turned out to be a judge. But she got away with it. He said, look, it's fine. You carry on. When I want the land for something else, I'll let you know. A group in Britain, in Todmorden, called the Incredible Edibles, are motivated to grow food to make their town sustainable within a decade. And if you go to TED's site and look up Pam Warhurst's speech, it is incredible what they've achieved there, using guerrilla gardening to get things going. Now, you might wonder why we don't ask permission in the first place. There's plenty of success stories here. At the end of the day, what we're doing, presumably, it looks like it's pretty good. And in these economic times, where the local authorities and central government have less money than ever before to look after things, you'd think people like us would be embraced. Well, sort of, but not quite. The national politicians are not comfortable with this, they're not interested, and my local authority are still very uncomfortable. In fact, whilst they have given me permission in one area, they still charge us if they were doing the gardening themselves, which is a little bit cheeky if you ask me. The reason we don't ask permission comes down to trust. How can an authority or a landowner trust someone who is not an expert gardener? They're not coming as an organization, they're coming as an individual or as a group of friends to look after this land. And how can the gardener necessarily even trust themselves to make the commitment for something that they're not sure how much hard work it's going to be anyway? So for me, going out there and doing it gets away with that trust, because once the conversation happens, you've got a track record. You've got a track record to say to yourself you can do it, but you've got a track record to show to the landowner that you're committed and responsible. So I've given you two big reasons why people guerrilla garden. There's the joy of gardening, to make places more beautiful, to grow food, and all the things that growing stuff can give you. There's the social side, but there's a third reason why people guerrilla garden, and that's one for which permission really doesn't make sense. It really isn't compatible. And that's one of protest. Pete here has been planting in potholes. He's one of many guerrilla gardeners who do this. Well, when I say many, I know of 3 of them. And they vary between artistic statements, but in Pete's case, it's a protest about the potholes in British roads. And I know one local authority who were quite tickled by this and felt that it was a valid protest and were going to act on filling these in. A protest I visited a few weeks ago in Frankfurt, outside the European Central Bank there. It's part of the international Occupy movement, Occupy Frankfurt. Now they've guerrilla gardened around the parkland there with vegetables and pot plants. Now there's a bigger message behind Occupy, but using gardening as part of it, I think, warms people to the encampment that is there, and it demonstrates a really hands-on action and love for the place, rather than the bigger messages that are harder to communicate to the passerby. And a gentle piece of provocation here in Portland, not in this picture. This is a Mercedes logo outside a dealership there, but a guerrilla gardener who contacted me called Sandy added a little bit of hedge to make it into a peace symbol. And she told me it lasted for 2 weeks before Mercedes noticed. So in this case, the guerrilla gardeners are really using plants as paintbrushes. The gardens may be very short-lived, but the power of plants to connect with people emotionally and to provoke in a way that isn't as aggressive as some other tools that protesters use is something that many now are embracing. I've done a bit of protest guerrilla gardening myself, which combine many of the reasons why people guerrilla garden. The situation was some villages next to Heathrow Airport, and they were threatened with demolition for the expansion of Heathrow. And Greenpeace contacted me to see if we could use guerrilla gardening as a way of bringing together the protesters from outside the community, the local residents who wanted to demonstrate their love for their community, and guerrilla gardening was a way of getting everyone involved in an action together to demonstrate the love we all have for this place, whether our motivation is saving the community or reducing the amount of expansion at Heathrow Airport. And we got loads of plants donated from a designer at the Chelsea Flower Show too. So to conclude, I have some petals, a Venn diagram that demonstrates what those 3 reasons are. And I show this to underline the diversity within the movement. And I hope that you've heard something today that makes you feel, yes, that's the kind of guerrilla gardening I want to do. And in your bags are packets of seeds that help you on your way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.